When the Puritans stepped off the Mayflower, a feeling of fellowship with Jews came with them. The Puritans looked to the Old Testament for their laws, gave their children Hebrew names, and even considered adopting Hebrew as the language of the New World. The famous Puritan preachers Increase Mather and his son Cotton Mather were early restorationists. Yet it was not until the 19th century that restorationism really took hold. In 1844, New York University professor of Hebrew George Bush, ancestor of the President's Bush, wrote Valley of Vision, or The Dry Bones of Israel Revived, arguing for a pragmatic program for encouraging Jews to return to Palestine. But by far, the biggest impact on American Christian Zionism came from British theologian John Nelson Darby. Born in Westminster, London in 1800, Darby was the leading architect of the Plymouth Brethren. An important element of his theology was that God had not abrogated his promises to Israel, but had different plans for Jews and Christians, with the role of Jews to fulfill the earthly kingdom with their return to Palestine.
Deny Israel's place and glory with Messiah, and the church will become earthly, rise in its own conceits, and finally, as a system down here, be cut off.
Darby spread his ideas in 7 lengthy missions to North America from 1862 to 1877. He shaped U.S. fundamentalism through his disciples, chief among them James Brooks, editor of a journal on prophecy called The Truth, Dwight Moody, the 19th century's Billy Graham and founder of the Moody Bible Institute, and Cyrus Scofield, whose Scofield's Reference Bible incorporated Darby's theology. Scofield's Bible became the single most influential fundamentalist text, at one time used by half of all evangelical groups. William Blackstone, a Chicago businessman close to Moody, developed Darby's arguments in his book, Jesus is Coming.
Other nations come and go, but Israel remains. God says of her, "For a small moment I have forsaken thee, but with great mercies I will gather thee."
Jesus is Coming, which sold over 1 million copies and was translated into 48 languages, including eventually Hebrew, made Blackstone a hero to evangelicals. Spurred to action by the wave of pogroms sweeping over the Jewish communities of Russia, Blackstone then embarked upon his greatest project, the Blackstone Memorial. This was a petition signed by 413 prominent Americans, including John D. Rockefeller, J. Pierpont Morgan, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, as well as clergymen and newspaper editors. The petition was presented by Blackstone to President Benjamin Harrison on March 5, 1891. The petition read in part,
What shall be done for Russia's Jews? Where shall 2 million of such poor people go? Why not give Palestine back to them again? According to God's distribution of nations, it is their home, an inalienable possession from which they were expelled by force.
Harrison promised to give the memorial careful attention. There's no evidence that he did so. When the modern Zionist movement emerged 5 years later, Blackstone was aghast at its non-religious nature.
Strange to say, they aver that this is not a religious movement at all. It is purely economic and nationalistic.
When Herzl put forward his Uganda proposal, Blackstone sent him a Bible in which he marked all the passages which declared the Holy Land as the land chosen by God for the Jewish people. By the early years of the 20th century, American zeal for Jewish restoration had cooled. From the outset, the idea encountered hostility from the clubby patrician elite of the State Department. Zionism was also resisted by Protestant missionaries who had originally gone to the Middle East to convert Jews, but soon turned their attention to the Arabs with much better success rates. President Wilson was close to these missionaries, which presented a problem in 1916 when the Zionists needed an American pledge of support for a British declaration in favor of a Jewish national home in Palestine. American Zionist leader and Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, in looking for a way to influence Wilson, became aware of the Blackstone Memorial, which had been submitted almost exactly a quarter of a century before. Brandeis contacted Blackstone and asked him to resubmit the memorial. For the sake of time, Blackstone did not collect as many signatories, but noted in his message to the president that it would have been easy to do so. The hope was that the petition would appeal to Wilson's Christian faith, and indeed its arguments moved Wilson. In June 1917, Wilson told Zionist leader Stephen Wise,
"Whenever the time comes, and you and Justice Brandeis feel that the time is ripe for me to speak and act, I shall be ready."
Brandeis and Wise insisted later that it wasn't their superior skill in playing the diplomatic game, but their success in appealing to Wilson's biblically based Christian faith that won the day. On October 13, 1917, Wilson gave the British assurance of his support for a British statement in favor of a Jewish national home. On November 2, 1917, the British cabinet approved the Balfour Declaration. Brandeis remembered with gratitude Blackstone's assistance and maintained a warm friendship with him until Blackstone died in 1935. Brandeis wrote to him,
"You are the father of Zionism, as your work antedates Herzl."
2 months after the Balfour Declaration, in January 1918, Blackstone was honored at a large Zionist meeting. He said,
"O my Jewish friends, God says that you are dear unto him. He has put an overwhelming love in my heart for you all, and therefore I have spoken thus plainly. Study this wonderful word of God, and see how plainly God himself has revealed Israel's pathway unto the perfect day."